and today we're going to be shading forms using cross-hatching. The supplies we need: a piece of paper, a ruler, and I have a couple of pencils on hand in case one of them breaks during the process. Alright, so let's begin. So the thing to remember when we're shading forms using cross-hatching is that as the lines get closer together, they're going to make a darker value. As they're more spread out, they make a lighter value, and we are using lines that are crossing each other. They're overlapping. So let's start by naming our paper Shading Forms Using Cross-Hatching. So make sure you're setting up your paper just like I am, okay? And then we're just gonna underline that and put your name in the corner. Alright, so we're gonna start just like on the other assignment, splitting our paper in half horizontally. So I'm using my ruler, but if you don't have a ruler, you can just use a straight edge, the edge of a book, a menu, whatever you got. Alright? And then next I'm going to be splitting this up into 3 sections by making 2 vertical lines. So you can eye it. You just want it to be as evenly spaced as possible. So I have one there and one here. Alright, so let's begin. So the first form that we're going to be drawing is a sphere. So when we're making our sphere, we always start with a circle. So remember, we're sketching very, very lightly. That way, if we make any mistakes, we can erase and edit and fix it. So step 1 is going to be to actually just draw the form. I'm going to tilt my page here. So my spheres always need adjustment because it's really hard to draw a perfect circle. So that's my start, and I'm just going to go in and just edit, just round it off. I'm going to turn my page this way so I can get this bottom part. Alright, and then I'm just going to erase anything extra. So by sketching lightly, we're able to adjust. And here I'm just going to erase that. Oh, I erased it too much. That's okay. I'm just going to fill it back in. Okay, so we have our circle. And then we're going to add our little background line. So remember, we're not drawing through it. We're just drawing behind it. So about there. Alright, so that's step 1. We drew the form. Step 2, we need to identify the light source. By identifying the light source, we know where our highlights and shadows are going to be. So by putting my light source on the upper right, that means that my highlights are going to be on the upper right and my shadows are going to be opposite to the left. Okay, so we're going to start by adding some curving lines that overlap for the first stage. So let's do that. And we're going to make them far apart. Notice how I'm curving them. Okay, so that's a good start. We're curving them. And this last one, I feel like I can curve it a little better, so that's okay if yours came out a little crooked. Just adjust it. We just want to curve it. Okay, and then next I'm going to just cross-hatch just by making lines going in the opposite direction that are overlapping. In this last one, I'm going to make it come out just a little more. So we notice we have this curving shape here. And if you came out a little too wide, you can always just erase. We just want to make that like a curving, kind of where the edges are. And then we can always add more once we move on. We may have to add a few more, that's okay. And then I'm going to cross this way. And I'm going to try to leave them just as far as I did there. The next line's just going to be a little shorter, curving, a little shorter, curving, a little shorter, curving, and then a little shorter right here. Alrighty, so notice how my lines are not touching each other, they're overlapping, kind of crisscrossing. So that's the first step. The second step is we're going to move further back and we're going to add lines in between these, but further back for our medium value. So I'm going to start here, and I'm not going to go out as far. I'm maybe going to put 2 in between these big spaces, but a little shorter. So 1, 2. They're getting a little longer, that way it's following. They're just going to be shorter than the lines that are around them. 1, 2, maybe I'll make that a little longer, that way it's overlapping. 1, 2, okay, and then finally I'm going to just tilt my page a drop. Alright, so just make sure that the lines are as evenly spaced as you can. Next, I'm just going to cross in for the medium value. So I'm going to go a little shorter. Let's see, I'm going to put it here. Okay. 1. So just adding in between, making them a little shorter as they go through. And try to make sure you're going to the edge of the form as well. Okay, so now finally we're going to go in to get our darkest value. Same idea. I'm just going to start squeezing them into the medium lines now, and I'm going to go further back, so these are going to be even shorter. So now I'm going to fit 2. Same thing, just 2 in each space, and most likely we'll have to just go back and make a few minor adjustments, because the idea by making them shorter as we're moving back is that the value is changing gradually from light to medium to dark. And I'm going to tilt my page, and it's okay if some of them are starting to touch each other, that's fine. And once I finish crossing them, then I'll see what I need to adjust. So the idea here is I'm just trying to cross over where I made my dark value lines just before this. Try not to go too far into the medium. And again, you can, if some of the lines touch, that's fine at this point. Because remember, the closer together the lines, the darker the value will be. Okay, so now we're going to look at this, and I can see I do have a good range. I have my darks look pretty dark, but I feel like in looking at this, maybe I can use a few more mediums so the transition between dark and light is just a little more gradual. So I'm just going to go in and just throw a few wispy mediums in one direction, just very gently. We just want to adjust it. And then I'm just going to go in and throw a few extra little mediums in the opposite direction. You just want to be nice and smooth here, okay? just to make it a little more gradual. Alright, so now looking at that, I feel like I'm almost there. Maybe I just need to extend some of my lights out a little. Just a little wispy. Okay, and then just maybe some of the longer lights, just to give it a more gradual effect of transitioning. Maybe I'll add, I feel like I might need one more light right in between here, one more light right in between here, and right in between here, and right in between here. And just extend this one up, and extend this one up. Alrighty. And I feel like down here is just missing something, so maybe another little light right here, or a medium. We just want to adjust it. So once we do that, we are looking at it. You know what? I think I want to make a little slight more layer of my darkest value. So I'm just going to go one way just to get it a little darker right on the bottom. So the rounded forms are the trickiest ones to shade because it's all about getting the contrast and having that really look like it's going from dark to medium to light. Okay, alrighty. So now once we finish that, we're going to be making our cast shadow. Okay, so our cast shadow is just going to be rounded. If this is the light source, it's just going to go opposite. So what we're going to do is we're going to just gently draw. So it seems like my edge of my paper, my form is being cut off here. So if you can't fit the whole circle, we're imagining it kind of going off the page, but we're not going to actually draw it on the table. So mine is just getting cut off a little. That's okay. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to just start adding my shading for my cast shadow. So I like to start just leaving some spaces. Sticking within the lines that I sketched. Remember, sketch it very lightly. That way at the end you won't see it. So I have it going in one direction, and then I'm going to have it going in the other. So these I can make straight because it's just part of the shadow. The actual form, you'd want the lines to be rounded. So we're just leaving some spaces. It's okay if they're not perfect squares because we are going to be filling them in. And then I'm going to go back and just in the spaces that I made, just start to fill in so I have extra dark, and just make sure that the lines are kind of touching but not overlapping, not going on top of the form. Okay, so we're just filling that in. Maybe back here there's a few. And then when I cross it, it's going to make it extra dark. So cross-hatching is a little more time consuming because it has double the amount of lines, right? We're crossing. This might take a little longer than the hatching assignment. Just take your time, be patient. If your hand gets tired, take a break. It's okay if some of your lines are touching, that's perfect. If some of them get a little crooked, just regroup and just straighten them out. Okay, and now I'm going to cross. So this is going to make it really dark. So I am angling my paper so that way I can have better pencil control here. There, just make sure we are going from the edge. So if you notice you didn't go quite to the edge, just go in and fill it back in. Okay. And then at this point, if you have any little scraggly lines anywhere, you can go ahead and just start to clean up the edges. And then we're just going to add a very light, quick cross-hatching to the background, just to give it a little like sense of space and like atmosphere. Like there's something going on back there, so it's not so plain. Alright, so that's how we did our sphere. So next we're going to work on our cylinder. So we're writing cylinder, and we're going to be drawing two of them. We're going to be drawing a vertical one and then one on its side horizontal. So for the vertical one, we're going to start with a ellipse, not too skinny. Okay, and then I'm going to make two vertical lines coming down, sketching lightly in case you have to make any adjustments, and then curve it at the bottom. Okay, looking at this, because I feel like this could be just a little straighter. There we go. Alright, and then I'm going to draw my second cylinder on this side, making a vertical ellipse now instead. Okay, drawing two horizontal lines coming out, and then curving it at the end. Okay, and then I'm going to add my background line. So it's the same process for each form. Step one, we draw. Alright, so that's that. Step two, we're identifying our light source. So in this case, it's going right in the middle. I'm trying to switch it up for you guys. And now step three, we're going to start shading in layers using evenly spaced crossing lines, going from light to medium to dark. So here, I'm going to start here. Maybe go about that far. You want to draw nice and light. You don't want to have strong edges here. And then I'm going to make some wide spaced vertical lines. Okay, and you do want the first layer to kind of overlap, and I'm looking here, I see that little guy is a little in the crooked, so I'm just going to fix that while I can. And then, because the light source is right here opposite, I'm going to add just two lines there, maybe three like that. Okay, so that's step one. For the first one, we're going to do the same thing over here, so making curving lines, evenly spaced. We might have to adjust them just like we did in the sphere, okay? We want them to curve, not too straight. Okay, and then I'm going to cross that. Maybe I'm only putting two here. I'll see what I have to do in the next step. Maybe I'll adjust. Alright, so now we have our lightest layer. Now we're going to go further back for our medium. And I'm just going to do two lines in between. And I'm going to maybe go past the second line only. Maybe down here I'll just throw one since it's skinny, and then cross. I'm just going to put one here, one here, and then maybe one more here. Okay, same thing here. I'm just going to add, let's see, to there, one, maybe a baby one here, and then 1, 2, 3, and there we go for that. I'm going to do the same thing for this bottom one. I'm leaving this flat, so I'm going to be adding a separate value there. So maybe I'm just going past that first line. You know what? I think I'm going to extend my light. There we go. That way I have room. If we go too short for the medium, we're not going to have room for our light. Okay, and then across, maybe I'll just put two. I'll put one here and one here. And that's our medium. And then I'm going to add, while I'm here, I'm going to just add, since we're doing medium right now, since this surface is flat, it's not an open cylinder. This is like if it was like a flat, like with a cover on it. I'm just gonna do some diagonal, evenly spaced, medium cross hatching, just to kind of get that finished. All right, so now we are up to the darkest value for this cylinder, so I'm gonna go even shorter, and I'm just gonna put lines in between the lines that are already there. It might be one or two depending on your spacing. Make sure at this point you're really going from edge to edge though. Right? From the edge, edge, edge. And we're like kind of feathering it out. I'm just going to maybe add 2 lines here, right in between the lines, the vertical lines that I already had. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing in here, nice and short. So I find the cylinder way easier than the sphere. The sphere is the trickiest one. Do your best to keep everything evenly spaced. Okay, next I'm going to do that finally down here. Maybe I'm going to come out past the second one. 1, 2, yep. And making sure we're starting at the edge and pulling out. Just going to come across maybe like so. Alright, so now let me look at them. Let's see if I need to add anything. Actually, yeah, maybe. I mean, if you wanted to, you can add a few more wisps of medium just to make it a little softer in transition, so it's not going like too stripy from like dark to light. So I'm just going to add a few mediums. Maybe I'll just add like another little medium here, maybe one more here, just to kind of smoothen it out. Maybe extend it just a little more. So this is just kind of like a back and forth, eyeing it until you feel that it is indeed gradually transitioning. Okay, and same thing, that's okay. Maybe here I'll add a few wisps of medium, very lightly, just to make it a little more gradual. Maybe I'll just add like one more light line. All right, so once that's done, now we need to do our cast shadow. So in this case, the light source is in the middle. This shadow is going to come out this way. So, and again, I went close to my edge, which is okay. Okay, we just want to imagine if it was coming out here. Okay, so that one is going to the left because the light source is on the right of that form, and on this side the shadow is going to tilt to the right because the light source is on the left. Okay, so this bottom is going to be flat, horizontal, just parallel to this one, and these two sides are also going to be parallel. So make sure that they are the same width apart. We don't want it tapering off. So once we do that, we can go in and start making our cast shadow lines. So you can start with making spaces, and then we'll go in and fill them in. So what you can do here, if you don't want to go into the other side, you can continue it, but I think I'm just going to let it get cut off here because that's the other window, but you can see how I imagined it going there, but I'm not going to let it cross into there. It's just kind of like when you take a photo and you crop it, and then I'm just going to cross, and then I'll go in and fill that in. I'm going to do this for both first because you want to, as you're adding value, kind of do it evenly around your page. You never want to just draw one object like perfect and everything else is blank. You want to have a nice range of value throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here as well. So for this one, I am going to just kind of diagonal cross hatch it because I do have horizontal here, and I'm going to try to make it have set the form apart from the cast shadow, which is making contrast, that it looks separated. Like it pops out, it's different, so that's why I'm making these diagonal instead, which is fine because it's a shadow. Okay, and then I'm going to go in and just add a few more lines just to make this a darker value. And again, I'm stopping. You can still see my little sketch mark from the shadow where it would be. Now, if when you drew this, you drew it a little more over, you may fit it. And it's okay in art to crop off. Makes it very interesting, gives it interesting negative space. Okay. So just making sure that the shadow is indeed going to the edge of the form, and then you can see how this is separate because the lines are going in the different directions. Also, you can really see where the form ends and where the shadow begins. That's contrast. So the cast shadow should be the darkest value. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So only go as quick as your pencil will allow you to, and stay neat. Okay, guys, you don't want to compromise craftsmanship when you're trying to hurry up. If you can't do it neat, slow down. And as you keep practicing, muscle memory, you'll get faster. I'm going to cross it. Alright, and then at this point, just make sure that you are indeed getting to the edges, and then you can just go ahead if you have any like loose lines, like scraggly, sloppy edges. It's very forgiving here. I think I'm going to add one more line here. There we go. Yep. And then you can just go ahead. If you wanted to fill that in, that would have been fine, but you can erase that if you want. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just add my little background just so it has a sense of space. It's not so blank, like something's going on. Alright, so that's the cylinder. Next we're going to work on cone. So we're going to be drawing 2 cones, and the shading technique is going to be very similar to the cylinder, except the cone has a triangular bottom. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to make sure it's higher than that line. Alright, and what I like to do is kind of try to eye where I want this to be. Make sure your cone is not too skinny, because you're not going to be able to make a nice range of value if it's too skinny. So making sure that the point is in the middle of the ellipse. That way it looks straight. If it's off to the side, you'll need to adjust it. And then I'm going to make a second cone this way. So just by making like if I was making an A, but not too skinny, again, you need a range of value. And then just curve. Okay, I'm going to take my ruler and just make my little background. Again, make sure your paper looks like mine. Don't just draw random forms on a paper. I want to know what it is, what the form is, which technique we're using. Alright, so step 1, we drew it. Step 2, we're identifying the light source. For this one, I'm putting the light source on the left, which means our shadows are going to be on the right, and it's going to be the same idea as the cylinder, evenly spacing them and crossing the lines. Okay, so I have my one layer. I'm going to cross it. Okay, and then I'm going to do it in the opposite in the inside because the light is opposite and it's hitting. Oh, I got a little mark there. Okay, and at this point I think I'm going to fix this, the edge of my form shape. I feel like it just got a little too wide there. I'm just going to adjust it. So it's okay. At certain points, you might get to a point you're like, I drew this. I liked it at first. I'm just going to fix it real quick. So don't be afraid to make adjustments as you're going along. If you notice something, edit. It's fine. Okay? So I'm going to go in there. All right, I have my first layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add a few diagonal lines in the opposite direction. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead to this next form and add that layer as well. Curving. Up to the top, and then I'm going to make my diagonal lines, making them shorter to stick within the shading that I made. And the reason I'm using diagonal is because this edge is diagonal, so it just helps guide us. All right? So the next step, we're going to start to add the medium next. So I'm going to go a little shorter. So depending on how you want to draw, you can either draw this way. I was drawing this way. Maybe I'll try this way now. So you can just adjust your hand position so you find the comfortablest way. So I'm going to go shorter. I'm going to try to put maybe just one line here. Just making it come out a little shorter. Since that was a smaller area here, I can put two. It's just depending on your spacing. You might only be able to fit one, or you might be able to fit two. Okay, and now look, I'm going to just make this medium come out a little more. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to put one line here. I'm going to add two in here, but getting shorter and sticking to my medium, so you can still see I have my my light and my medium. Same thing here. I'm going to just tilt my page. One, maybe two in here, maybe one in there. Just cross. Alright, leave that there. I'm just going to extend this medium because remember, we don't want our lines touching each other. We want them to overlap. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'll draw this way for this one. Going shorter. Just trying to evenly space them. And then I'm going to cross it again, the opposite direction. Maybe I'm just going to put one, but they are getting shorter, sticking within the medium. So right now we have obvious, we have light, we have medium, then we're going to go ahead and make our darkest value layer. So I'm just going to go really short, like just this little sliver here. I'll turn my page this way, so you can adjust again your hand positioning. Whatever's comfortable for you. So I'm just going to try to get in the little spaces. It's okay if it overlaps at this point. Okay, so we can see it's getting much darker on the edge. And then I'm going to add opposite lines, just sticking in that edge. So we can see here we have our dark, our medium, our light, but I feel like I need to bring out my dark a little because it is a kind of solid looking. I just want to make it a little more softer, transition a little, just a little bit, just so it's a little more gradual. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, just really short, cross it. So we have light, medium, dark. Same thing here. Maybe this one I'll draw this way. Just getting really short, starting on the edge, feathering out. Just trying to fill in the spaces very gently. It's really short at this point because this is the triangle. It's like a triangular shape for the cone. Okay, and then I'm just going to make just a few opposite lines. And then maybe I can use a few more wisps of medium, but actually I'm not minding this transition. Maybe right here I kind of see it's like an abrupt edge, so I am going to just add a few lines if I feel where the dark is turning into medium is like a little too abrupt and looking like a stripe. Maybe over here I'm going to add one more little light. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to start to make our cast shadows. So again, the shadows complement, right? They match the shape of the form. So in this case, and since the light is right here, the shadow is going to go down here. So I'm going to make a very light triangle. The little points are meeting each other. But I'm going to curve the top a little drop. Kind of looks like an upside down pizza. Same thing here. Okay, so I'm just going to have this edge. This is going to help me here. This edge, I'm just going to kind of continue that edge right there. And then from where the shadow starts, just kind of do one of these. Alright, and then I've adjusted it. So I'm going to be erasing whatever I fixed. Alright, and then we'll start filling in. So for this one, they're not really, it's only the point touching it here, so I'm just going to go across. I'm leaving some space. Then I'll fill it in after. Okay, and now I'm going to, starting at a corner, I just want to make it go opposite. So it's really important that you do lightly sketch the shadows so that way you know your boundaries when you're shading, you know, like to keep it in to match in the desired shape. Okay, and then here I'm going to start from the point and just go across. Okay, so you can see I'm going across. I'm going to move my page over a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to, let me add one more down there, and then I'm just going to cross them. Okay, and then I'm going to go and fill in over here. Just making my lines, filling it in, staying in my boundaries. And I'm going to cross it, following the same shape of the line. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for the second one. You can start at this point from either direction. I'm just choosing to go this way, but you could have gone with the other way. Okay, and then we're going to cross. Alright, and once we're done with that, we're just going to add our little light background of just quick diagonal cross hatching, nothing major, just to give it the hint of like something's going on. So that's how we did our rounded forms. So again, the most important thing with the rounded forms is we're doing it in layers. light crossing lines, then medium crossing lines further back in the spaces, and then dark crossing lines very close together in those spaces. And then if you have to add a few extra wisps here and there, we just want to make it look gradual. So now we're going to move on to the flat forms. So they are different in the sense that, yes, we are using overlapping lines to create the value, light, medium, and dark, but in this case, everything on each side, the value is not gradually transitioning, like in the rounded forms. It's going to be just flat. So we're going to start with the cuboids. So for this, we're going to draw a cube and a rectangular prism. So I'm going to start up here, draw my square as neat as possible. Remember, the neater your shapes are before you make them forms, the neater your forms will be. So we're going to start with a square. And I'm looking at it, I feel like my square is a little slanted, so I'm just going to fix that while I can, since I noticed it. Okay, that's a little tilting. Okay, and then maybe I feel like it's a little too long. Kind of is getting a rectangle vibe there. I'm just going to shorten it and erase any of the lines that I used that I corrected. Okay, then I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to make a diagonal line going this way, and then I'm going to make this diagonal line parallel to that one. I want it to go in the same direction. Okay, it's okay if one of them is longer than the other because we're going to fix it right now. So in order to properly complete this cube, we need to make a vertical line right here. And we're also going to do, a horizontal line back here. Okay, so that way this is parallel to this and these two are parallel to each other, and just erase the extra. So notice how I did have extra. I'm not just going to connect it to connect it. I want to make sure that that when I do connect it, this one is vertical, so don't just, you can just make the straight line and erase, and this is horizontal. Okay, and then next we're going to make our rectangular prism. So I'm around here. Just starting with a rectangle, making sure that our rectangle is nice and straight. Right? Remember, if you start crooked, you're going to have a crooked form. So I'm looking, I feel like that could just be a little sliver straighter, a little sliver straighter. Okay. Just fixing it, erasing any adjustments. And now for this one, I'm going to have the edges go to the opposite side. So here I have the diagonal lines going to the left. Over here I'm going to have them going to the right. So I'm just going to start by adding my diagonal line. This one's parallel and so is this. Making sure they're in the same angle. I shouldn't see any flat bottoms here. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and just from this edge, completely vertical. So just sketch really lightly. It should match this line, and then this is going to be horizontal. Okay, because this is parallel to that, and I'm just going to fix this. I feel like there's a little edge there. Let me fix that up. Okay. And then erase any extra lines. Remember, if some of these lines, the diagonals are a little too long, don't connect them just to connect them. Make sure it's, it's parallel. It makes sense. That's how you get crooked forms. Alright, so I'm just going to go here, making sure my ruler is making sure at least it's above the back corner of the cube. And I'm going to, from the edge out, lift, from the edge out. Alright, so then that was step 1 for the cube. Now we're going to start step 2 is identifying the light source. So in this case, I'm going to put my light source on this side again. I'm just kind of alternating just so we get a feel of like switching it up. All right, so for both the cuboids, rectangular prism and the cube, the tops are going to be the lightest because they are right under the light source. Okay, so we're leaving the tops the lightest. We're going to be starting with the mediums. So again, remembering evenly spaced lines that are very straight. There is no curving lines in this now. So I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to start, and I'm going to tilt my page just a little drop for pencil control. And I'm going to start by making lines evenly spaced. So I feel like the cubes are definitely easier in terms of not having to like make sure they're gradually changing into each other, but the challenge here is making sure that they're straight. So everything has its own challenge, and I'm going to tilt this way and go in the opposite direction, trying to keep the same spacing I had there. The idea is we want to kind of have little squares happening and go from edge to edge. That's the medium on the cube. Now we're going to apply the medium over here to the side. So the reason I did vertical and horizontal here is because the side lines are vertical and the top and bottom are horizontal. Here I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go diagonal because these lines are diagonal, and then I'm going to cross it with vertical. So evenly spaced. The good thing is, since this is kind of skinny, I'm only going to add like two lines here. So I noticed by the time I got down here, it's a little angled off. That means it wasn't quite parallel. So all I have to do is I'm just going to erase that edge and just shorten my rectangular prism just to drop. That way it matches. It's not a big deal. You can do that. That way everything is parallel. I'm going to make my two horizontal vertical lines here, so evenly spaced. Alright, so now we have our mediums. Let me just define this line right here real quick. So next we're going to be doing our darkest value, which is going to be this side because it's farthest away, and this side because it's farthest away. So in this case, I'm doing the opposite here. I'm going to be going diagonal because these top and bottom lines are diagonal. And I'm just going to get as close together as I can without it touching. So I'm not leaving the space and filling in the gaps like I do to the cast shadow, because that leads to them actually touching. So here we just really want to make them as close together as we can, but without them touching. And only go as fast as your hand-eye coordination will allow you to. You don't want to compromise neatness and craftsmanship with hurrying up, okay? And then I'm going to go in and cross it with vertical lines. So I'm just tilting in the opposite direction. So you notice I just kind of go back and forth here. And you know I do this in class. Making sure you're going edge to edge. And if here and there a line is a little crooked, that's okay, as long as it's not scribble scrabble. So you can see here we do have, and I'm looking, I feel like I'm going to leave it, because you can tell this is dark, medium, light, and then I'm going to do the same thing here before I add my cast shadow. So I guess I'll just start with the vertical ones this time. Remember, as close together as you can without them touching. The more you do this, the neater you'll get. Okay, I think it's time to change my pencil. Once I'm done here, it's getting a little on the dull side, so my lines are getting a little chunkier. So if you see that happening, just sharpen your pencil. I'm just going to cross close together without touching. Making sure you're going edge to edge. Okay, so now we're ready to add our cast shadows. So let's do that. So because the light source is on the right, that means the shadows are going to go on the left. So here I'm just going to kind of gauge it. It's like opposite, so I'm just going to have it go in this direction here. Okay. This is going to go in this direction, just as long as they're parallel. Now this bottom one, I'm looking at this diagonal and I'm going to make it parallel. So you can see here mine is just getting cut off the very little corner. That's okay. So this is only going to have 2 values, this will have 3. So the white of the paper, the highlight, is the lightest value. We're leaving that plain, and we're going to start by making evenly spaced diagonal lines, because that's diagonal. And this is the second closest to the light source, so it's medium. And then I'm just going to cross it, so I'm going to tilt my page, that way I can make straight lines vertically. Maybe I'll throw one more in here. Okay, so that's a little close, but that's okay. It still looks medium. And then at this point, I'm going to go in doing horizontal lines in the opposite direction, close together, just like I did for the cube, as close as I can without having them touch. Okay, and then I'm going to cross them with my vertical lines. Okay, and now here, so it's okay if a couple of the lines are a little closer together or slightly slanted at this point, as long as it looks neat and to the best of your ability, because we're not using rulers and we're not using, and we're not printers, right? We're not machines, so to the best of your ability. And now I'm going to do the same thing that I did here, right here, leaving a nice amount of space. So I'm going to start with my horizontal, because this is horizontal, this is vertical, because that's going to be vertical. So just spreading them out. It's okay if they're a little wider than the other one we just did for the other triangular prism, because there's only 2 values here. So it can be either like dark like that other side, or it can be like in between medium and dark. Okay, it's up to you. Sometimes we try to start light and it ends up getting darker. So we can see here it almost looks like a layer cake or something, right? It has layers. So we're going to go in, and I can already see I'm going to have to erase. I have a little extra line there, but I'm just going to cross it. I'll save that. Alrighty. We're getting there. Okay, and then making sure we get to the edge, because down here I'm noticing my line are not really touching the edge. I have a little space there, so I just want to make sure that it's completed. Alright, so then once we have that, you can clean up, see a few little edges I can clean up where my line's extended. Then we're going to go ahead, since the light is in the center, just like the cylinder, the shadows are going to split into opposite directions. So this one is going to go to the left because the light source is on the right, so I'm just following this line right here, make my life easier. And this one, again, if you're drawing from looking at an actual object in real life, you would be adjusting the direction of your shadows based on the location of the light source. Here we are generalizing, and here I'm going to look at this angle and I'm just going to put that there. And then here it's going to go opposite, so I'm looking, it's kind of going in that direction. Not too tall because this is a little on the short side. Just want it to match. We wouldn't make it like really tall if that's short. That doesn't make sense in reality. And then we're just going to go in and start adding our shading. I'm going to start with spreading my lines. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just go diagonal here just to kind of change it up. We want to have, again, we don't want to see where the form ends and where the shadow begins, or where the shadow ends and the form begins. We just want to have that clearly defined. Okay, we're going to do that here. And then I'm going to cross it. Okay, now I'm just going to go back in there, fill in my gaps. Getting as close together as you can. At this point they can touch because you do want the cast shadow to be the darkest value. Just filling it in. Filling it in. And then I'm going to angle my page just so I can cross it neatly. So again, only go as fast as your hand-eye coordination will allow you to stay neat. Do not rush it. I don't want to see scribble scrabble. I don't want to see sloppiness. Take your time. This is also muscle memory. We've drawn so many lines in this activity that you're getting more control because you're just repeating this, you know, this movement so many times. So I'm going to go in here, just fill in. Doesn't matter which direction you start with. Alright, so I'm noticing my lines are kind of changing. I just want to keep it consistent with that one. I guess somehow when I started from where I started to where I ended, the line shifted. But that's what's great when we're doing this dark value. It really is forgiving when you want to adjust lines. And I'm just going to go in here, making sure I am going from the bottom of the form. We don't want there to be any white gaps between the form and the shadow. We just want to make sure that it does indeed fill in from up there. Okay, almost there, guys. And then we have one more form left. We're almost there. Okay, and then you can just clean up any little edges that you need to clean up, and we'll add our little diagonal cross hatching background here. Alright, there. Okay, so that is triangular prism. So now our final flat form is going to be pyramid, and there's only one of them. So pyramid, okay.